Welcome to Slash Forward. I was originally afraid of doing this episode because aside from the ever-looming threat of copyright issues, this one was based on classified footage that whistleblows a huge government cover-up. Luckily, it implicates various Scandinavian governments, so we should be okay jurisdictionally speaking. With that, we will follow Tomas, Johanna, and Kalle, a trio of young and ambitious filmmakers, as they go to investigate a mysterious string of bear murders, the underlying motivation for which is related to protecting local populations from an unknown and unseen troll threat. Let's see what lore stands up to scrutiny and what is merely for the storybooks of our youths by starting with a brief summary of the plotline. Let's get to it. We open on some sweet, succulent information. What's incoming is a rough cut of some discovered materials that blow the lid off of some deeply held governmental secrets that, after an intense investigation, have been deemed fantastical but authentic. We then head out with documentarians Tomas, Johanna, and Kalle to the site of an impending bear hunt, where they intend to put together some footage for a college project involving bear hunting for some reason. They meet some stout Norwegian fellows who tell an intriguing tale of a strange man in a Land Rover who's been following them all around. And the thing is, he weren't no bear hunter they ever saw. If he's a poacher, they may be able to snag some salacious programming and guarantee a passing grade. Bristling with excitement, they quickly catch sight of the aforementioned rover and attempt to track it down the road, but end up losing him along the way. Tomas learns the man's name is Hans, and by sticking to it, they eventually catch a lead that brings them all the way to his stinky, well-lit travel trailer. Hans is an odd bird who likes to adorn his hermitage with fresh thyme and stays out all night, returning to sleep each morning. The industrious filmmakers wait up for him and, having lost all decorum to sleepiness, go in hard with no warm-up. This results in abject failure, but they pretend like all they really wanted was a close-up of his car. Later on, they bug his trailer with a hidden microphone. The information gained reveals that he expects to find some undefined thing that very night. So when he leaves later, they follow him out. But again, he knows these back roads too well, and they are unable to keep up. They instead settle for some night vision footage of the interior of his trailer, which is both sparse and furry. The next day, they get word of another unregistered bear kill that was found. That's unusual enough, but in this case, the tracks don't match a normal bear cadence, leading some of the hunters to suggest this big boy was dumped. But Finn from the Wildlife Board finds this conjecture ridiculous. I mean, there's a bear right there. What more could you want? Hours later, and completely unrelated, Hans packs up and moves his caravan down the road a piece. The advantage here is that this makes it much more difficult to hide. They're able to trail him onto a ferry and conspicuously follow him out into the boonies, where he likes to go and plant tires once in a while. When they climb aboard a second ferry, Tomas decides this is a good time to re-engage with the man, but real casual-like. The cagey old-timer waves them off, however, forcing them to continue their soft pursuit. And he's really piqued their interest now, as they very nearly cream their pants at the thought of getting him to say anything at all. They follow him into a new campground and maintain a respectful distance while he settles in and hooks up his electric and sewer. They wait for him the entire time he's sleeping, but still have to scramble to keep up with the wily old codger. The trail leads them to a service road that they proceed down under threat of getting blasted, and frankly, they're unimpressed with the upkeep. Well, they're shelling the road, but still industrious, they park it and wander aimlessly into the dark wilderness. They eventually pick up the trail and locate the car. Assuming Hans is on a night hike, they proceed along a hiking trail. Off in the distance, they pick up some strange sounds on the equipment and see some flashing lights. No interpretation is necessary here as Hans busts out of the underbrush screaming, and they very smartly flee in the same direction. Except he yelled troll and something got its claws on Tomas, who comes out of this dripping with ooze and stinking to high heaven. Hans hooks him up with a free and unannounced tetanus shot before helping mend his torn jacket. They try to inquire into what the hell happened back there, but he's back to being pensive now. He's such a sad boy. They get to their car and find it to be similarly gooey and incapable of conveying them to their destination. Now they really press the whole troll thing because insurance is gonna need an explanation. But Hans is insistent that he will not be made to appear foolish on camera. On the ride back, they attempt to endear this solitudinarian to their company by constantly badgering him about letting them film his woodland exploits. After a time, finally, it works. He agrees to let them come along, so long as they do exactly as he says. They spend the next day notifying their families of their whereabouts while eating bananas. When they meet up, Hans makes sure they're all heathens for lore consistency, and then they make their way back out to the prior evening's location. At the site, he reminds them that they agreed to do what he says, and then he orders them to strip down and wash up in the river. He wants them fresh for when they rub troll musk in all their cracks and crevices. They naturally balk at his freakiness, but again, there is one rule, and right now, that rule is to rub a loofah tainted with troll sex grease all over their persons. Then it's off into the woods. He reveals his special weapon to be a UV cannon, since sunlight is their weakness. He then consults with his veterinary contact as the woods are absolutely drenched in piss, the telltale sign of a potentially ill Rindlefinch. You didn't need a veterinarian to tell you that. He sets them up in a clearing while he goes to flush it out. As they wait, they continue to entertain the idea that this is all just a big goof. This isn't helped when Hans jogs out casually to announce the presence of a very dangerous troll. And I'll be damned, a mid-sized troll emerges. They run and get split up when Callie takes a spill, forcing us into his perspective for the rest of the evening. He's able to utilize the night vision to narrowly avoid getting his bones ground up in the troll's jaws. The gang reunites, and after another unnecessarily close call, they retreat to the truck. Hans, always the stylish gentleman, sings his quarry a little folksy ditty before he lights that bitch up. In the high of this victory, everyone's now all enthusiastic to declare their lifelong love of troll lore. But the whole scene turns into an episode of The Cut, when Hans tries to sniff out the secret Christian that attracted the troll in the dark. But they all swear to God they're down with the devil. As things settle and Hans works to dismantle his prey, it's revealed this whole operation is part of a huge cover-up to deceive the public. Over a long enough period of receiving shitty wages, he's just grown tired. So now he's ready to blow this thing wide open. This process goes well into the morning until there's nothing left but a pile of gravel. Then the Wildlife 5-0 rolls up and we learn that Finn is actually complicit. He just plays stupid on camera to throw people off the troll trail. He's not happy about the filming, but lacks the authority to do anything about it for the moment. Plus, the painters have arrived with the bear carcass. As they work to get things set up, we learn that the troll they destroyed was not the Ringlefinch they're tracking. As they move on, we additionally learn that Hans is tasked with culling the herds to make sure they don't get too close to people, and that all this interterritorial movement they're observing puts them in a uniquely dangerous situation. Then they settle in for some breakfast, trollage, and paperwork to keep track of slain trolls. Back at camp, the crew has earned their way into the trailer, which is riddled with troll tails to keep that stench up. They check out his stank rendering station, but this is only a brief stay due to the urgent need to get this Ringlefinch under control. So they ride out and look for clues like large patches of downed trees trolls may have used to scratch their asses, and rebait his rock traps, and basically pass time in the interminable lull before the next explosion of violence. Then a report of slaughtered sheep creates a tingle in Hans' loins. They watch carefully from the outskirts of the journalists and gawkers while the hunters attempt to make heads or tails of the evidence. But old Hans knows they've got a Ringlefinch on their hands, and he intends to draw him out that evening so he can take a blood sample to find out why it's acting so strangely. They start by baiting the bridge with a high-value treat. They wait for a good span of time before snapping branches, and the bleating of a helpless Billy signals their guest's arrival. Hans walks out to confront it in his troll suit, drawing aggro with a bucket of Christian blood and a very annoying cowbell. Trolls actually like to delicately select their treats and try to avoid confrontation, unless you try to stick it in the ass. Luckily, Hans only suffers a massive concussion and many broken bones, but he does remain uneaten. He staggers down for round 2 because he's bound and determined to get at those sweet juices. He then triggers the UV bomb and splatters that bitch. Then they take the sample to his veterinarian friend, still slathered in viscera, and discovered that they drew a pint when she only needed 1 drop. It'll take a few days to process, so with that, they take their leave, and are soon back among the tales, filling out paperwork and doing some good substantive research. We discover that many troll incidents are blamed on natural disasters, implying trolls are unnatural. And bet they didn't think of that. Still hoping to get to the core of the hyperactivity issue, they continue on to the next troll territory. The edges of the territory are marked with tires to verify movement, as mountain trolls love gnawing on steel-belted radials. This is one of the many activity-identifying techniques they use as they roll through. Only when they arrive does Hans reveal that they're entering the home of the Jotnar breed, a unique species of gigantic troll. And sure enough, reports tip them off to potential troll activity that can only be explained away by claiming an unseen tornadic event. But they know it's trolls and anticipate a return trip through the valley. They come back at night and Callie has enough doubts about continuing on that it becomes fairly clear that he's a closet Christian. The trail leads them back to an inactive mine. It seems to be empty and couldn't possibly house a Jotnar, but they wander in just because it's cool and creepy. And in point of fact, it is dripping with blood. Still nervous as ever, Callie vigorously rubs himself down with the leftover troll taint. This was a good measure because when they reach the back, Hans identifies this as a whole-ass lair. They attempt to leave immediately but are cut off by the family of trolls returning from their evening errands. They find a cozy little alcove, hoping the beasts will pass by, but these shaggy little dickheads pull up and start snoozing right there. The plan is to get some rest and wait things out until it's safe to leave. However, amid a mental breakdown, Callie comes clean about his beliefs, and by the blood of the lamb, the trolls start stirring. This sends him screaming into the darkness, forcing them all to run the gauntlet. They get so close to the warm embrace of the morning sun, but Callie ends up finishing the process of smelling as much like troll as is possible. They all take a breather and try to come to terms with their loss, but only briefly, as Hans needs to figure out why these suckers are migrating so far from home. When they return, Finn has arrived to retrieve the tapes, but they're all digital, baby, and they flip it around on him by questioning the morality of keeping this dangerous secret from the public. Determined to ride out to death or glory, they quickly recruit a new camera woman, hoping she'll pass the sniff test.
Du tror ikke på Jesus, du tror ikke på Gud. Du muslim, sant?
Jeg muslim, ja.
That's the same god, y'all. She happens to be a credentialed wildlife photojournalist, but their preparations are unlike anything she's familiar with. What they find is absolute destruction. The only reasonable explanation for the scale of this is a Jotnar running through and chasing the Dovre trolls out of their territory. Oh yeah, you were hired to film trolls, so get on board quick. They travel to the wastelands where a huge electric fence is disguised as power lines. Hans goes out to the station to consult with the grid boys and is shown where they've had some recent unexplainable outages. Hans has an explanation, but also can't imagine how severe the problem must be to get a Jotnar to ignore the electricity. They work their way across the territory in a systematic way until they reach a TSS cabin they intend to use as a home base. They rest here for a bit, but then a stampede of birds indicates trouble a-brewing. At about the same time, Tomas's shoulder starts to get real tender, and the vet calls to notify them the Ringelfinch had rabies. And so they're basically dealing with a stark raving mad troll that likely passed his biological gift to the other trolls, which was ultimately transmitted to Tomas. Given that the scourge has had a few days to fester in his blood, Tomas is pretty eager to seek out medical treatment, but the incoming Jotnar is a more pressing matter, and he's a biggin. Hans lures him away from the cabin by blasting some hymnals. Once they're out in the open, he splatters him a little with some UV, but can't keep a consistent flow. Hans circles back to pick up the crew and ride ahead of the troll to try to wear him out like a fish on the line, but they lose their lead when they have to pick up a hitchhiker. They use the lights to keep that big bitch off him, but then decide they have to get back in front and are easily swatted away. When they regroup, Hans is venturing out to hit him with the finishing blow. He manages to catch him while he's trying to take a dump and hits him with some sort of pulse beam. They're feeling pretty proud on the way back, but cut the celebrations short at the sight of a government convoy. They take off running and Tomas lets Johanna eat shit so he can try to save their footage. But the recovered media ominously ends here. But to put a cap on the story, they reveal that sometimes there are signs if you're looking, like when their PM had a cheeky little slip of the tongue.
Norge har troll, sånn at det kommer til å være behov for flere strømledninger I Norge.
PM? More like BM, am I right? We've got a little bit to fill out here in terms of some technical details. Trollhunter maintained that typical balance of trying to work in characteristics that followed some of the general folklore surrounding troll society, while also trying to insist that since this isn't a movie, not everything falls into the typical tropes. As a result, there is some effort to explain what's going on with troll physiology, as well as the broader conspiracy to obfuscate their existence. Because of this, there are some info dumps of technical details that don't flow as well with the rest of the movie and are hard to address in a brief recap while also maintaining a good flow. For instance, the vet made sure to explain in detail why trolls react negatively to sunlight. They have trouble metabolizing the vitamin D, which causes extreme reactions in their body. Younger trolls get a severe case of bubble gut that balloons out of control and causes intestinal eruption that blows the whole troll apart. Older trolls experience an extreme calcification that essentially turns them into a statue. Why is there such a significant difference in their reactions to sunlight? That they didn't have time to explain, apparently. Other small details: the blasting zone sign was phony. It's something Hans would put up to keep people away while he's doing his important work. They also showed that aside from depositing the dead bears, they would also lay out other evidence like the footprints. Although it's unlikely Finn weighs as much as a bear, so that would be pretty useless. Tomas did try to stir the pot a little here and there by noting the unusual crisscrossed pattern of footprints, like the bear was doing a dance routine. He also asked the electricity man if he thought it was odd that they had all those power lines going around in a circle to seemingly nowhere. The employees were actually not aware of the secondary purpose of the lines. They were just very welcoming to anyone who came and was interested in their work, like at a fire station. Hans was constantly bathing in sunlight, to the point where he had a hard time sleeping in the dark. He would wear sunscreen at all times to combat the potential damage from this. He was part of a larger network of conspirators employed by various government entities and was the only one of his kind in Norway. One other small detail: the hitchhiker they picked up was a seismologist in the area studying the multitude of small seismic events they had been experiencing. Even with all of that extra context, there are still items left unsettled. To start, the motivations of the characters are somewhat thin. The video crew just sort of stumbled onto this. They were doing a college project focused on bear hunting and licensure procedures, I guess, but then thought following a poacher might be intriguing, but then stumbled upon the troll situation. And Hans's reasoning for finally relenting was just kind of that he felt like it was time for the public to know. Even if there wasn't some grand reason, they could have leaned into his loneliness to rationalize his behavior and add a little characterization for him. It's also not totally clear why they have to do things the way they do. In terms of keeping it all a huge secret, it's certainly not to protect the troll population, even though it seemed like that at times. But really, their containment efforts mostly involved killing them. Hans even told a story about how he once had to clear out a whole colony, just massacre a tribe of trolls. He made a point of clarifying we were talking about trolls of all ages, genders, conditions, etc. He seemed haunted by the memory of what he did, but that's also still pretty much his job. Also, I guess trolls don't have that many defining qualities that would be interesting to see live in a movie. They really relied on that Christian blood thing quite a bit. They gave the winky little "this isn't a movie" thing about other tropes, but visited that well many times. And despite all of the other unnecessarily complex explanations given, there was no real mechanism described for how that all worked. There's no question they were talking specifically about the blood itself, because at one point they use it absent the Englishman. But it's based on belief? How does that work? In fairness, Hans does say he's not sure what the outcome would be for a Muslim, but I'd like to surmise that Malika was in the most danger of them all. Islam is part of the same monotheistic tradition as Christianity and Judaism, so that was pretty reckless and she likely survived by pure luck. Other than some of those goofy inconsistencies, this movie was fairly well done. For being a low-budget monster movie, they employed a variety of useful tricks to pull things off, like keeping most of the monster-rich environments in low-light conditions. A common technique, but one that goes along with the typical troll characteristics, so that works well. Despite that, they also pull out the big guns at the end and in full light, and did a pretty good job of that as well. So good for them. This is a pretty good low-budget foreign monster movie. If you're interested in any of those things, then this one will probably work for you. It's one of just a handful of Norwegian films that gets talked about in the US, so they likely did something to warrant that attention. Although I do think they missed an opportunity by not getting deeper into the fairy tale lore. There's an entire untapped audience of troll fans out there that have gone unserviced by this movie, and that's a shame for them. Now that we're here, I want to congratulate you for making it to the end of the video and affirm that you are a very special person because of it. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my donors, memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. Any donation unlocks a growing collection of uncensored movie recaps. And if you enjoyed the video, I would love for you to become part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.